I believe I have already sent the file in the line group. You may have already seen it, and I have already uploaded it into the LMS also. So let's talk about it for a few minutes before we start the lecture. Okay, let me share the screen with you first. Okay, you may have already seen this from the line group. Okay, so the final presentation assignment. Please find the information related to the investment or the development of the transportation related project. It can be the project in Thailand. It can be the project anywhere in the world. And make the presentation. Okay, it's the same rule. The same rule applies. The rule said that everybody must present, which means everybody must give the presentation. Okay. Anyway, the topic of the presentation, again, it should include introduction, background of the project, investment value. How many dollars, how many baht, how many RMB are we talking about? It depends on where the project is. Okay, if it's in Thailand, I would prefer in Thai baht. If it's in other countries, it should be in US dollars, or if it's in China, it should be in RMB. So it depends. Okay. The schedule of the project. I want detailed schedule of the project here. Okay. Detailed schedule of the project. When will the project start? When is it going to be finished? And what's in between? What's in between? Again, I want detailed schedule of the project. And I said detail. I mean detail. If you give the presentation and you give me rough schedule of the project, like, okay, the project begins at this and it will end at that, and that's it. Don't tell me I did not tell you to give me detailed schedule of the project. Okay. And then expected outcome. Expected outcome. In terms of money and in terms of not money. For example, money is quite obvious, right? If you invest like 2 billion baht, the return will be in 20 years. Each year you get 200 million baht or something like that. Okay, that's quite obvious, right? Monetary benefit. Okay, but if it's the transportation related project, we will talk about non-monetary benefit. For example, it can create jobs for people around the area, for 3 million people or something like that. It can connect people between cities, and it may create like more business between each cities. Those are non-monetary benefit. You have to think about it. You have to find information on it. For example, the expansion of Suvarnabhumi Airport will create non-monetary benefit. How? Okay. It's your job to find it. Okay. So choose the project wisely. Choose the project smartly. Okay. And then number 6, apply one theory that you learn in class related to the selected transportation mode. It can be from any chapter. It can be about risks. It can be about anything. It can be about anything that you study in this class. Okay. Number 7, intra-model and inter-model competitors analysis. For example, if you choose the project that is about the expansion of the highway, for example, the expansion of motorway or highway from Bangkok to Kolat, for example, okay, Bang Ba-in Kolat motorway project. This one is quite popular. Okay, Bang Ba-in Kolat motorway project. Intra-model competitor means the competition within the same mode. So we are talking about the current highway that they have between Bang Ba-in and Kolat. Okay, what's the difference? How can they compete? And how about inter-model competitor analysis? For example, the railway between Bang Pa-in and Korat. How could it compete with your selected project? How could it compete with your selected project? And then your recommendation. Should it be invested or not to invest? And why is that? And then a summary, and then of course Q&A. I will ask question. And as usual, you need to submit the PowerPoint presentation file to me, the email, before the presentation date. Before the presentation date, which means just 1 day before is enough. Okay. Okay. The example is listed here. It doesn't have to be exactly the same as the example. This is just the example. Okay, just the example. But please make it related, directly related to transportation project. If you're not sure, you can ask me first. Okay. Not the launching of the new model of Tesla or something like that. No, that's not a transportation project. Okay. That's a business project. Okay. Not like, oh, the launch of the new Porsche Taycan. That's not the transportation project. Okay. Any questions so far? Any question at all?
Can it be the project in the past?
The project in the past?
Yes, that can have been done already, or it should be the new project in the future.
Ah, interesting. If it's the project that has already been finished, how can you answer? Question 8. Because it has already been invested. I mean, I'm not going to limit it to be the project in the future only. If you think it is interesting, yes, you can do that. It can be the project in the past. Yes. Please choose wisely.
The topic 8 is only our opinion, right?
Yes,
Sometimes
yes,
that
your
project
opinion.
might not be good enough to invest, in our opinion. So
yeah, but the government was stupid enough to invest, right? Yes, I understand your point. Yes, then yes, it can be project in the past.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other question? Thank you for your input anyway. Any other question? Again, this type of project is not limited to Thailand. Especially if you're international students, it doesn't matter. It can be project anywhere in the world. It doesn't even have to be in your hometown or your home country. It can be anywhere in the world. Okay, it can be anywhere. For example, if you're Chinese or you're Vietnamese, you may want to look at the project in the US, and that's possible. Okay, in the past, a few semesters ago, a group of Thai students did the project in the US, and it was quite interesting. So yes, you can choose anywhere, the project from anywhere in the world. It doesn't have to be from your hometown. But a few years ago, there was a group of Vietnamese students, and they chose the project of the expansion of the airport in Vietnam, which is quite interesting. I learned a lot of things from those presentations, and in this class, you're not the only one who learned something new. Okay, I learned something new from you too. Okay, so we are teaching each other. Okay, we are teaching each other. Of course, I teach you in the theory side, but I will need some input from you too. You can teach me by giving presentation on those interesting projects. Okay, so I learn from you also. So I'm expecting to learn from you. Okay, so please give good presentation. Find interesting topics. Okay. And the method of presentation. Okay, and the method of presentation. It doesn't have to be plain regular presentation. It can be fun. It can be like you can do it in the form of like game show or whatever you want to. I mean, if you want to give regular presentation, it's okay. But if you can make it more interesting, that could be extra point for you. Okay, that could be extra point for you. If you make it fun, if you do some role play, that would be even more interesting. So please be creative. Be creative. There is no limit here in this presentation. It can be anything. You can do it in a form of whatever you want to, okay? In any form possible. So please be creative, okay? Any other question before we move on to the lecture? Okay, no question? Okay. Then let's move on to the lecture of chapter 10. Okay, if you have any other question later on, do not hesitate to ask. Okay, do not hesitate to ask. Okay, chapter 10, global transportation planning. Global transportation planning. Okay. Discussion outline. Okay, there are just three main topics here. Relationship between international trade and global transportation, and then overview of global transportation and global transportation planning. In planning, there are so many things that you need to plan. Okay. There are so many documents involved. I will not give you the details of every single document, but of course I will tell you the needed documents. Okay, I will give you the idea on how those documents work. But of course, each item, each detail, I will try to give you as much information as possible. But of course, we have just only one semester. We cannot talk about just document. We have to talk about other things also. But I mean, a lot of people take like the whole year working on this international trade before they can be 100% correct in document filling. And for the groups that did the presentation on the e-custom, you should know that there's a lot of documents. I mean, there's tons of documents that involved in international trade, in international transportation. And this is not the class that will teach you like details document. That would be for the import-export class of the IBM department. But in this class, we will talk roughly about those documents. Okay, but we will talk about something else too. Okay. So there are things that managers need to consider in international transportation. Okay, the current issue, which is quite interesting. Okay, capacity management. Okay, capacity management. When the capacity is okay, by okay I mean not over capacity, not under capacity. I mean that most of the time they can fill their own like 80-90% of the capacity of those planes and ships and trucks and trains. Then there should be no problem. There should be no issue. Unfortunately, the world doesn't work that way. Last year, at the beginning of the pandemic, around March or April, at the beginning of the pandemic, we had the problem. We had the problem of under, not under, how do we call it? Like very low demand of international shipment, like a shock of the market. Not a lot of people travel anymore. Not a lot of planes are flying. Not a lot of demand is happening. So there's plenty of capacity left in those transportation. Which means they would compete by lowering price. A lot of ships, a lot of planes, they decided to pool capacity, means put their capacity together, like planes that do code share flight. Instead of flying their own plane, they merge the flights with the others. Also, the same thing happened with the ocean transportation. They pool capacity together. Less options, less scheduling option, and lowering the price. Those, how can they manage capacity of like very low demand, or we call it oversupply? Okay. On the other hand, after the beginning of the pandemic for about 5 to 6 months, demand for international shipment has gone up because people don't go anywhere, but people still want to shop. People still want some products from abroad. So the demand has gone up. So the price of international shipment has gone up. That's the other way of capacity management. That's the other way around of capacity management. Okay, those are the current issue that is happening right now in the world. Okay. And then we have security requirements. Okay. Remember from the previous chapter, we were talking about terrorism. We were talking about piracy, especially in the US. Okay, in the US, they are really afraid of terrorism. They're afraid of terrorism because 20 years ago there was a terrorist attack in the US. You guys may be too young to remember that, but in 2001, the terrorists from the Middle East had hijacked 4 planes, and 2 of them crashed into the World Trade Centers. There were 2 towers in the World Trade Center, Tower A and Tower B. Each plane hit each tower. Okay, and then another plane hit the Pentagon, which is the headquarters of the Department of Defense of the US. Another plane went down before it reaches the White House. Okay. So after that, in the US, they have changed the way international transportation and the airplane mode worked. Okay. Since they were attacked by the terrorists, they are so afraid of like dirty bombs, like terrorists and a lot of things. So any freight that move into the US, that has been shipped into the US, will need more time for inspection, which will result in higher cost, which will result in higher cost. Okay. Next issue is freight protection. Freight protection. Again, from chapter 9, we have learned about piracy. We have learned about so many things. We have learned about risk management. We have learned about risk mitigation. We have learned about risk transfer. One way to mitigate risks is to transfer risk by paying for insurance. When the risk is getting higher, you will pay more for the insurance premium. Basically, the total cost of shipment is getting higher because you pay more for the insurance. Okay. Next issue is freight control. Freight control. When people need more products from long distance, for example, especially in the US, they need more products from Asia, especially from China. Okay, when there is a long distance shipping, long distance transportation, the truth is it is difficult for the visibility of freight because it takes months. It takes months in the ocean. And there is a high possibility that you don't know exactly where your freight is. It is difficult to control and it is difficult to monitor. Even with the technology right now, with the technology today, it is better. It is better now because with the satellite technology, I mean, you can know exactly where your ship is with the GPS technology. But you cannot monitor, you cannot see exactly where, I mean, how your freight is doing. The technology is not that advanced. Okay. You know where your ship is, but you cannot see exactly where your freight is. And then the last issue is peak season availability. When is peak season? For example, during the holiday season, Christmas, Thanksgiving, New Year, there will be the problem of port congestion or equipment shortage, which will result in delay, in delivery delay. Those are the current issues. Even with the pandemic that is happening right now, there are problems of port congestion, especially in the US, because people start to live like normal in the US. People started to live like normal. Unlike in many countries that we still wear masks, we still have some places, a lot of places closed, like Thailand. But in the US, everything is going back to normal. Okay, but I mean, I'm not saying that it's a good thing or bad thing, but I'm just saying that is what is happening right now. And that's why they are going back to have problem with the equipment shortage and port congestion in the holiday season because people are going back to celebrate. They will order a lot of products. Okay, so international transportation will be busy again. Okay. Now, this is the statistics Okay, this is the statistics of the global export value. During 2008 and 2009, there was a recession in the US. A lot of people call it hamburger crisis, okay, recession in the US, which results in the lowering in transportation demand. Okay. But if you look at a regular time, excluding the Great Recession, you can see that global export value is in the trend of increasing. It expands about 4% annually. It expands about 4% annually. And does the pandemic affect it? Yes, it affects the global export value. Do we know the number yet? No, we don't know the number yet. But of course, last year, especially during the beginning of the pandemic, the number has gone down. Okay, but it is, we believe that it is getting better. But we have to wait for the data of this year. So we have to wait for next year before we know what is going on in this 2 years interval. So let me ask you, what do you think? Okay, so there is no right and wrong answer. I just ask for your opinion here. Okay, I just ask for your opinion here. There is no right or wrong answer. What do you think the number of global trade is going to look like in this year? Is it going to be increase or decrease from last year? Okay, just for the people who have not full, I mean, just the people, just some of the students who did not get full score in participation. Okay, can you please answer me? Okay, let me call someone. Butsaratarin. Butsaratarin. Are you still here? How about Danai? Are you still here?
Yes.
Yes, can you please answer the question?
I think it's gonna be bad than last year.
You mean the number is going to be lower than last year, right?
Yeah. It's lower
Why?
than last.
Why?
Because I think the situation it seems to be more worse than last year.
The situation seems to look worse than last year. Okay.
They have new สายพันธุ์นะครับ of the
new variant of virus. You mean the Delta variant, right?
yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Very interesting. How about Kavikan?
Yes.
Yes, can you please answer the question? Hello, are you still here?
Yes, can you hear me, Ajahn?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes, please answer.
Can you repeat it again?
No. Nakarat, please. Nakarat, are you still here?
Yes.
Yes, can you please answer my question?
Can you repeat it again?
No. Natisha, please.
อาจารย์
Nisha, are you here?
Ajahn, can I try?
You are
ธันวรัตน์ค่ะ
Hanwarat. Okay, yes, you can try.
I think it will be decreased more than last year because of the situation in country and more people lose their job and about COVID-19 effect in logistics.
COVID-19 affect logistics. Oh, interesting. How?
Like in now many logistic company the employee they get COVID-19, so many company will close to export in like in many province อะค่ะ
Okay, okay. Thank you very much. How about someone else? Can anyone would like to get the
กนกพรค่ะ
participation score? Okay, Ganopon. Yes, you
Yes,
can answer.
I think it will be increased.
You think it will be increased? Okay, interesting.
Yes.
Why?
From my perception, there is more competitive among the online store around the
More
world.
competitive. Oh, okay.
Yes, and that will affect the price of goods decrease. So people will think that buying online is more cheaper than going to the store themselves.
Oh, okay, interesting. Thank you very much. Okay. How about someone else?
พักกีฬาค่ะ
Yes.
If compare with last year I think it's gonna be increased ค่ะ
Okay.
because I think people around the world got vaccinated more and the transportation about to go get cover อะค่ะ not including Thailand อะ
Not including Thailand. Okay. Okay, because we still don't get
yes
many vaccine. Okay, interesting. Okay, interesting. How about someone else? Yes, I would like to hear your opinion. The new generation.
Teacher, how fun?
Often.
I think
Okay.
will decrease because compared last year, people know the money is important, so maybe they want to save money in bank, and they don't want to spend too much, so they can face the risk.
Okay, okay. So they realize that they need to keep their money. They need to save their money instead of spending, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Hao Feng. Okay. How about someone else? Anyone would like to get their participation
มี
score?
ค่ะ
Okay, yes.
พลอยชมพู
Ploy
ค่ะ
Champu, please. Yes.
I think it's gonna be decreased because some country didn't import fruits from Thailand.
We're talking about global scale.
Yeah, I mean that some country didn't import some product from some country because maybe it was infected the COVID-19, so they didn't sure that the product will be safe.
Oh, okay, okay. Because a lot more people got infected, so they're not sure whether the products are safe or not.
Yes.
Okay, interesting. Okay, thank you. Anyone else would like to give their input?
พิมพ์พลครับ
Okay, please answer.
I think it will increase because this year is the second year of COVID-19 and many trade, many business have more stable for the business because they have gained some adaptation from the last year from the beginning of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So they have some adaptations such as some business change to online or some other plan to handle this pandemic.
Okay. Thank you, Pimpon. Anyone else would like to give their input?
I can try.
Yes, please.
Okay. I think it will be increased. People change their behavior to shopping via online shopping to sell the product. And Ajahn said before that people can order the product in abroad, and it will increase global export ค่ะ
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else?
ปาลินครับ
Okay, please.
I think it will be go down because COVID-19 affect the lack of workforce. For the entrepreneur, they don't want to lose more cost about for that.
I'm not sure what you mean. The entrepreneur doesn't want to lose more cost. What do you mean more cost?
Cost about the workforce.
So how can it affect global export?
เหมือนแบบเขาไม่ต้องการแบบเสียค่าใช้จ่ายกับการจ้างพนักงานแบบช่วงโควิด -19 นะครับ
So you mean the demand will going down because not a lot of people have enough money?
ครับ
Oh, okay. Interesting. Okay. Yes. Anyone else before we wrap up? Anyone would like to try? Anyone would like to get some more score before we wrap up? Okay, then we can wrap up this topic here. So you can see that there are two ways of thinking. Some of you, even with you guys within the same generation, some of you think that the global export number will be increased. Some of you think that global export number will be decreased. And on both sides, you have very good reasons to support that. You have very good reasons to support your answer. And I respect that. As of now, we're in the 8th month of the year. We still don't know what is going to happen because a lot of demand will happen in the about November and December. We will not know that yet. So let's see what is going to happen. Okay, but it can either be increased or decreased. It can be either way with very good reasons to support on both sides of the answer. Okay, and I thank you for your input. I really want to hear the opinion from you guys who is the next generation of people. In a few years, you will be the one who drive the economy of this planet. Not only this country, but this planet. Just in the next few years, you will be the workforce. You will be the one who drive the economy. So thank you very much for your input. Okay. Now let's talk about overview of global transportation. Okay. Basically, we're talking about a lot of money here in global transportation. Okay. I'm not going down in details into numbers of $905 billion, blah, blah, blah. No. That's too much details. But in global transportation, I would like to talk about two things. Okay, I would like to talk about two things. In global transportation, If we are talking about transportation between neighboring countries, like from between Thailand and Laos or between Thailand and Myanmar, most of the time we use trucks and railways. We use trucks and train to transport between neighboring countries. On the other hand, if we are talking about intercontinental transportation, like between Asia and Europe, most of the time we use ocean transportation or air transportation. But in terms of volume of transportation, in terms of volume of freight that has been transported, water carrier is responsible for more than 90% of total volume. Okay. So let's talk about global trade agreement. I know that we have already talked about some of these trade agreements in chapter 2, but let's talk about it again in details. Okay. Global trade agreements, what does it mean? It means the agreement between countries. Because in export and import or international trade between countries, you need to pay tax. You need to pay duty for importing products from other countries. And those import tax and import duty acts as a barrier to prevent the free flow of products between countries. Because when you want to import something, when you want to buy something, for example, you want to buy something from Amazon in the US, the price in Amazon may look good, but when you calculate total cost, which includes import tax, it may be too high. It may be over your budget. And the seller in the US will not be able to sell that particular product to you. Same thing happened to Thai seller. Same thing happened to Thai farmers. They want to export their rice to the international buyers. But those countries, those buying countries, they also have import tax, which acts as a barrier. They may want to buy rice from Thailand, but when they calculate total cost, including transportation and tax, those costs may be too high for them to buy. So it doesn't look good for both countries. For example, between Thailand and Australia, okay? Australia has so many dairy products, okay? Like milk, cheese, butter, chocolate. Those are dairy related products. Thailand has rice. We have so many rice, so many kinds of rice, so many tons of rice that we want to export to Australia. And they have their demand for rice. We have demand for dairy products from Australia. But our import tax and the Australian import tax acts as a barrier, to prevent the flow of dairy product from Australia and the flow of rice from Thailand into Australia. So the government of Thailand and Australia come and talk with each other to create an agreement. We call it free trade agreement. Okay. Free trade agreement, how this works. The free trade agreements between two or more countries agree that the tariff, the fees, the duty, the tax will be lifted. Some items of tax will be decreased. Some of them will be canceled. Which this lower in fees, with this elimination of those fees, those tax, will allow faster and more business between countries, which eventually will create more demand for international trade, which will eventually create more demand in international transportation. For example, the government of Thailand and Australia come and sit together and say, okay, how about Thailand? We just eliminate the import tax for dairy product from Australia. And how about you, Australia? You eliminate the import tax for Thai rice into Australia. And when we agree together between two countries, we call it bilateral free trade agreements. Bilateral, bi means two, right? Bilateral free trade agreements. But if those happens between more than two countries, like what you see in the EU, in the European Union, European Union works as a regional free trade agreement. By lifting all the tariff, lifting all the tax. Basically, you can walk between those countries without border at all. You can ride the train between Belgium and the Netherlands without any border at all. No one will come and check your passport. No one will check your luggage, whether you have anything to import or declare as an import or not. No border at all. Those are the ultimate goal of regional FTA, and the EU have done that. So let me ask you a short question. I'm not going to need a lot of inputs, okay? Some of you, okay? Just two of you, okay? Please answer me. What would happen if ASEAN countries have an open border policy like an EU? What would happen to the international trade among the ASEAN countries? Can anyone give me an answer? No one wants the participation score?
I think about it is about the worker, like the low labor income salaries.
What would happen?
I mean that if no border, it means that every people can travel to each other and the job will be less in some country that have higher standard like that อธิบายเป็นภาษาอังกฤษไม่เข้าใจใช่ไหมจ๊ะ You understand me or not?
Yes, I understand you. You mean like, for example, like in Myanmar, they have very low wage rate. So
Yes.
the Burmese people will come to Thailand to work more because we have higher wage rate, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. How about international trade? Okay, I would like to hear from someone else. Okay, Bunana, you have already got full score. Okay. Someone else would like to answer. How about the trade, the amount of trade between countries? Do you think it will be increased or decreased? Why? Within the ASEAN countries.
I think it's on increase because it can connection between other country easily and can increase the economic travel and transportation.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. You have already got full score.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, just one more person. I want to give the score for any of you.
Can I try?
And you are. Can you please tell me who you are?
กวีการค่ะ
Gavikan. Yes, you can try, please.
I think it will be increased ค่ะ
Why?
Because it we have to help each other to be increase our economics. So because we have to join together to be trade the products to other countries. So it will be increased.
Okay, I believe your answer is correct because everybody in the world believes that when there is no borders between countries, the trade between countries will be increased. But your reason is not like exactly correct. But I'm going to give you the score anyway. But the thing is, the reason that that the trade will be among the countries will be higher because when there's no border, people tend to find out that the total cost of the product will be cheaper because there is no tax at all. Then when the cost of the product is cheaper, people tend to buy more. That would be the ultimate answer. Okay. But thank you anyway. So let's talk about the 3 critical flow in supply chain. As you know that in supply chain, there are 3 main flows, okay? Goods or product flow, information flow, and monetary flow or money flow. Because global transportation not only involves the physical flow of the product. We need effective information flow between exporter and importer. And of course, when there's a trade, we need money. So the flow of payment is needed to complete the transaction. So to plan these 3 flows, we need to understand the logistics channel. This is the concept of the logistics channel. Okay. There are 3 main concepts: the transaction channel, communication channel, and distribution channel. For today, we will talk about the transaction channel. Okay. Begin with transportation. Transportation. So when you purchase goods, purchase products, as a buyer or importer, okay? Importer means buyer in this sense, okay? So importer, sorry for my handwriting. Okay, let me write it again. Okay. Importer means buyer. Okay, sorry for my handwriting. The Surface Pen is not as good as the iPad pen, so it looks really bad. Okay, importer means buyer. Okay, the importer or the buyer want to protect its financial interest and reduce risk. In the transaction, they want to specify the details with the exporter. What are the details that we talk about? The details about the product quality, product price, product quantity. Those are the basic details. But beyond that, they want to specify and clarify where and when the ownership of the freight will transfer from the exporter to the importer legally. It sounds a little bit confusing here. Why do we need to know? Because we're talking about long distance transportation. From China to the US, it takes months in the sea. So they want to know when exactly and where exactly that the products transfer its ownership from the exporter to the importer. Because when you own the product, when you are the owner of the product, you have the responsibility to manage. You have the responsibility to manage the mode selection, the insurance, the routing. Those details are called term of trade, And terms of trade will determine who is responsible for which step, who is responsible for transportation payment, who is responsible for insurance payment, who is responsible for duties, who is responsible for local transportation, who is responsible for any liability. Those terms of trade will clarify all the details here. Okay, it's called terms of trade. We'll talk about terms of trade in details in a few minutes. Okay. And then we have term of payment. So unlike domestic trade, where you pay the money and you grab the goods and you go, in international trade, you cannot do that. You cannot do that because we're talking about long distance. We're talking about long distance transportation. For the exporter, sometimes exporter and importers have never met each other before. A lot of times they have never met each other before. So the exporter are afraid of not getting paid, right? They're afraid of not getting the money. So as an exporter or as a seller, they would prefer getting the money before shipment of the product. On the other hand, as an importer or as a buyer, they are afraid of not getting the products. They are afraid of not getting goods. So they would prefer getting the product first and then pay the money. So exporter wants money first, then release the product. Importer wants the product first and then release the money. So we need to sort this out first. Otherwise, the trade will not happen. Otherwise, trade cannot happen. Next is communication. Because the major challenge in global transportation or in international transportation is you need visibility, especially when there is a handoff between modes and carrier. For example, from trucks to boat to trucks to rail to trucks. There are so many modes of transportation here, and there will be handoff between each mode. Both the exporter and importer need to know where the products is, especially the expensive products. Because sometimes we're talking about machineries. Especially for people who work in a factory. For example, in my case, okay, I have a factory and I have imported machines from other countries. And those cost millions of dollars. We need to know where the goods is. We need proper documentation because the government needs that. Different documents is needed for different import and export countries, for different banks, for different governments. A lot of logistics companies also handle all the documents for you. And different countries need different documents, as I just told you. Sometimes the shipment can be delayed due to this issue because incomplete document. Sometimes the products have already reached Klong Toi port or Lam Chabang port. But you cannot get your product, you cannot get your machines out of those ships because you don't have the proper document. We need to solve it. And you can see that global transportation is really complex. It increases risks for disruption because it's long distance. Freight has to be handled by multiple facilities. For example, PUD terminal, break bulk terminal, port, and then break bulk terminal, and then PUD terminal again. There are numerous intermediaries. There are so many people in between, like boats, trucks, and rail. And each country has different rules. To overcome those mentioned challenges, as a transportation manager or logistics manager, you need to manage the distribution channel. They must plan mode, carrier, and route selection. They must make sure that the freights have been protected carefully. Okay. So global transportation planning in terms of export. Okay. It begins with you prepare order and then you prepare for export and then you make decision in transportation. Export preparation activities begins with number 1. Choose the term of trade. Choose the term of trade or Incoterm. We call it Incoterm. Okay, term of trade. Usually as a buyer, you only care about product price, quality, and quantity of the products. However, there are issues that are related to transportation that must be considered. For example, the clearing goods for export, organizing the transportation of goods from origin to destination countries, and then clearing customs in the country of import, then arranging the payment for transportation, insurance, and duty, and then moving the freight from the port of destination to the customer's factory. So there's a lot of things that gets involved. And most of the time, it can be specified by using the terms of trade. Terms of trade, okay? The terms of trade are usually specified in the contract. We call it Incoterm, okay? If anyone in this class would want to work in international transportation or international logistics company, you need to know this. Okay, Incoterms was established by the International Chamber of Commerce. It is recognized internationally with the three-letter acronyms. The term of trade is specified in the contract, which determines which one is the responsibilities of exporters, which one is the responsibility of the importers. It shows precisely where the exporter's responsibility ends and where the importer's responsibilities begin. Incoterm has been divided into 4 groups. You don't need to memorize everything here, okay? I will tell you exactly what you need to memorize. Okay. It is, again, let me tell you again, it is important because it is used worldwide. Even I am in manufacturing, I need to know when dealing, I need to know about Incoterms when I am dealing with buying anything from abroad. Okay. And those are the list of the Incoterms. Okay. This one is the previous version. Okay. This one is a previous version, not the current version, but they are almost exactly the same. Okay. These are the previous version. Okay. And those are the terms that I would like you to know. Okay. There are 4 terms that you should keep in mind. Okay. EXW, FOB, CIF, and DDP. Okay. Let's begin with the EXW, or called X works. In X work, the E here is the responsibility of the exporter. Basically, the exporter's responsibility is to make the shipment available at the exporter's facility. After that, it will be the responsibility of importer. The importer agrees to take possession or the ownership of the shipment at the point of origin and to bear all of the costs and risks up until the product reaches the destination. So if anything happened to the product after it left the seller's facility, it will be the responsibility of the buyer. A lot of time when I deal with the international seller, they would propose very low price of the product with the term X works, because all the responsibilities will be falling into me as a buyer. And if you have to deal with international seller, I would highly recommend you not to choose this term, because you have to bear all the risks. I would highly recommend you not to choose this term. Okay. The next term is the F term. Okay. The one that I would highly recommend you to pay attention to is the FOB. Okay. FOB here. Once the product or once the freight is loaded onto the ship, it will be the responsibility of the importer. So the risk of damage is transferred to the importer because the ownership has been transferred to the importer once the goods are actually loaded on the ship. So the exporter just pay for loading onto the ship, just pay for those things, okay? From packing, loading into the truck, being onto the truck movement from the factory, from the seller factory to the port, export tax, and then terminal tax, terminal charge of the country of origin, and then loading onto the ship. And then after that, it will be the responsibility of the importer. FOB is the very popular term in international trade. It's a very popular term in international trade. If you have worked for the international ocean liner or some freight forwarder company, you would see a lot of FOB here. And then we have the C term, the very famous one, the very popular one is CIF. Okay, CIF. The I here is very unique. I here means insurance. I means insurance. So the exporter will pay for everything until the boat reaches the country of destination. You pay for everything until the boat reaches the country of destination. Up until the boat reaches the country of destination. When the boat reaches the country of destination, then the ownership of the product will be transferred to the buyer. So if anything happened during ocean transportation, it will be the responsibility of the seller if the term is CIF. And also the seller will pay for the insurance. When I deal with the international seller, I would highly prefer this term, CIF. I would highly prefer CIF. Okay. And then we have the D term. And the one that I would like you to focus on is DDP. DDP means deliver duty paid. So it requires the exporter to assume responsibility for all the cost up until the product reaches the buyer's factory or reach the buyer's facility. This is the best term that you can have, but most of the time it's almost impossible for any seller to agree to this term. Okay. Okay, this is Incoterm. And this is the Incoterm 2020. Again, the X words are the same. FOB are the same. CIF are the same. And DDP are the same. Okay. This is the Incoterm 2020. They are the same. For the term that I asked you to memorize, okay? So, but Incoterms is not everything. It will not cover the contract between exporter and importer, okay? It just shows whoever responsible for what, okay? But in details, you have to sign your own contract. Okay, you have to sign your own contract. Okay. Okay, thumbs up. That's it for today. And in the next class, we will continue this chapter and we will have a presentation of chapter 10. Don't forget to make a presentation of chapter 10. Not sure which group. Group 9. Okay, don't forget to make a presentation for chapter 10. I have already uploaded the question of chapter 10. It's in the Word file. Just take a look at it. Okay, just take a look at it. Okay, it's pretty easy actually in this case. Thank you very much, everyone. If there is any question, please ask. If you don't have any question, you can leave now.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
everyone.
Thank you ครับ
Thank you, teacher.
Thank you.
อาจารย์ครับ